It's Monday, February 11th, 2013. I'm Rin.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights Tonight, talking about routers.
Let's do this.
So I'm walking down that long ramp just now, coming back to the studio, and from the 456 to the 7 train under Grand Central.
Oh, that ramp.
Long ramp. It's pretty wet, so it's kind of slippery.
And it's downhill.
I'm walking. And a girl next to me wearing these tall boots just like falls out of nowhere. She's young. She's like our age.
That'll happen.
She just falls. And she goes like, ugh, and doesn't get up right away. So I kind of pause and do the kind of New York thing. If you look a little bit, just to see if it's something you should get involved with.
Yep.
And her ankle is 90 degrees.
Okay.
And she
probably
can't,
some weird ass shoe.
And she's like trying to get up and like she can't get up. And she's not, now for a second I'm like, whoa. But she's not really yelling or anything. So her friends like get her up on her feet. And then she reaches down and pulls her boot back up. She fell because her foot misaligned in the boot. And the boot itself turned 90 degrees. And her foot was like 6 inches up in the boot.
What the hell? Why don't you put your foot in your shoe?
I don't know. So basically her fail was that she was wearing jank-ass boots. So I went from thinking she had broken her ankle sideways, which would have been kind of disturbing, and I probably wouldn't have brought it up on Geek Nights, to kind of funny instead. And what seals it is her friend once like picks her up and she's like, man, I told you these boots are shit.
This brings
Why
up
do you wear these things?
This brings up something that is a bother of mine, right? That is often exposed when people come to the city where much walking must happen.
Yeah, every time we had a friend who wears high heels when they visit us
Not
here.
even high heels, but I am opposed to any shoe that is not functional, right? It's like, what is the point of a nice looking shoe? You buy it because it's super nice looking, even though I don't agree that those shoes are even nice looking, personally. That cannot be worn or walked in or run in or anything, right?
I have one metric in New York City. Can you walk as fast as I plan to walk for at least a mile on New York City streets with neither discomfort nor damage to the shoe?
Or damage to your foot. Because
if you cannot, you probably either shouldn't wear those shoes or shouldn't come to New York.
Right.
Now, if you're way shorter than me, then we have to prorate your speed of walking to how long your legs are. I'll give you that. Mm-hmm. I don't expect someone who's 2 feet shorter than me to walk 4.6 miles per hour down the street at a sustained rate. Because for them, that's running. But I got a much more related thing that happened. So at work today, coworker had a problem. He has an old laptop, and basically the reason I'm asking...
How old?
Like a year or two.
That's not that old.
It's kind of old. So basically, I'm asking you this because I'm curious if you would suggest what I did, because I was the office hero because I gave advice and he was able to recover the data. Hard drive and laptop got immersed in water.
Uh-oh.
Let's forget about how. Laptop fucked. Done. Forget the laptop.
Okay, take the hard drive out with a screwdriver. Yep.
He dried it and everything.
Yep.
Like you waited days. But like you do, if a hard drive, if you get a phone or something wet, you turn it off, take the battery out, and just wait a few days and hope it dries out and see if it'll start at the end. So he does that. And what he does, he takes one of those external enclosure things.
Good idea.
Plugs it in and just turns on the power. It doesn't plug into a computer, just turns on the power to see what'll happen.
Good idea.
And all it does is go click, 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 and nothing happens. So he, of course, tries plugging into a computer. Same thing. It just goes click, click. So, Scott, my question to you is, in that situation...
It's magnetic, obviously.
Yes, it's a spinning disc. A standard laptop-size SATA spinning disc. I think it's 80 gigs or 120 gigs, something like that. What would you suggest he do?
There are 3 tricks I know, each of which are the more extreme option, right? Option number 1, smack it once, then try again. Option number 2, the old freezer trick. But I would be hesitant on the freezer trick because of the water possibility. But with the 3 days of drying, I would be...
So the freezer trick worked.
Of course.
Straight up. They And
you go
I realized,
for the free. You put it in a Ziploc bag. You put it in the freezer. You take it out. You start up and you get the data off really quick before it breaks again.
So basically, yeah, we thought along the exact same lines. We know.
And option 3 is the bathroom clean room trick.
Scott, I think you and I know the same amount about hard drives.
Why wouldn't we?
Well, there's some things like I know more about networking than
So do you had a
know?
freezer at work that you used?
Yeah, we have a full-size fridge.
How long did you put it in the freezer
basically,
before it worked?
he's like, well, how do I get the data off? And I was like, did you try hitting it? He's like, what? And I'm like, well, you get I explained like the torque and how you want to get it spinning again.
Maybe just the thing is off the edge of the discs and the reader, and if you smack it, it'll bounce back.
Just like, okay, but no, that's not going to work. So basically, I'm like, all right, here's what I would suggest. And I explained, like, let's put it in the Ziploc bag, put it in the freezer. I said at least 2 hours, which is about right for a consumer freezer. I would
have been slightly wary because of the water, but it's already dead. So I mean, what have you got to
I
lose?
would assume that the water was gone because it's been dried for a long time. And if water got in, like fully in
water
there,
is very unlikely to get in. It's most likely to be on the contacts on the board.
If the water was still in there, then it's fucked.
Yeah,
anyway.
water is very unlikely to get in where the discs are. It's just going to get all over the circuit board.
But it'll get maybe into where the bearings are.
That's
what I was thinking.
Maybe.
The main reason these tricks work is because you're trying to just reduce the torque necessary to get that disc spinning. Because once it's spinning, you're good unless the controller.
Well, you have to get the reader has to fly on the surface. It might if it falls off.
But those are all secondary problems. And the click, click, click was obvious. It can't spin the disc up at all. If it did nothing, I would assume the controller was dead. If it had spun up but there was no data, I would assume there's some problem in the platters. But the fact that it did the click, click, click like that meant it was trying to spin the disc up. So I'm explaining like what to do, and he's looking at me, and now the whole office is watching like, what? What?
Did you bet money on it?
No. I was like, it can't hurt. Just trust me. So he does it, and sure enough, spun up just fine, got all the data off of it.
They never heard of the freezer trick.
No.
You hired a whole bunch of technological people to work at a company that makes software, and not one of them know the freezer trick.
Most tech people I know don't know how to recover data from hard drives. Because that is a skill that was only relevant in the day back when, you and I, we could only afford one hard disk.
Now I have more than I need. I got rid of a bunch of them.
You'd buy a new hard disk, but you're going to fill it up with stuff. And the old one, you're never going to put that data. We couldn't afford an external hard disk back then.
No.
And also, back then, spinning disks were way more prone to failure.
They were.
Yeah.
Yep.
So even if I backed up my data, I couldn't afford to buy a new disc. So if it just died, like anything I could do to get it spinning again, just to use it for another day.
Why don't we try to put the old disc in the freezer? You know that
My old disc? You think I didn't try that? You think I didn't try? It's the platter thing, I think, is the only way to get that data. Though I looked, and apparently it's only a few $1,000s now for like those data recovery people instead of the few tens of thousands. Last time I checked,
is it worth a few $1,000s to get that MP3?
It might be. Maybe I'll kickstart. Let's see if we can get that MP3.
That's all you. That's all you.
So it's Monday. It's not the lounge. It's Tech Day. So you got any news?
Yeah. So there's a rumor going around, and there's
some rumors going round.
No, there's no real good news going on. So I'm just gonna do rumor news. Is rumor of Apple Watch, but this rumor was an old rumor, and it's been reinvigorated. And I kind of want one if it's real.
I've wanted one forever. The only reason I didn't kickstart the Pebble is that because the Pebble. And this is just me with my own uninformed opinion, not slandering or libeling or anything. To me, a thing like the Pebble coming through Kickstarter, mostly out of nowhere, implies that it'll probably work and do what it says, but the time to market for something like that versus, say, if Apple or Google did it for their respective platforms, the time to market is going to be so much shorter for Apple or Google, and they have so much more access to R&D and manufacturers that even if the Pebble comes out tomorrow, a month after that, the Apple one's going to be 100 times better.
It's funny that you said that because I just got an email today, and you know what the email said?
Your Hex Bright flashlight shipped?
Your Pebble Watch has shipped.
Oh, you kickstarted it.
I did. And so the thing is, if this Apple Watch comes out, you can expect an eBay listing, Pebble Watch for sale. But yeah, the thing about this new Apple Watch rumor is it's combined with a non-rumor of Corning willow glass. And Corning is pretty much #1 glass there is. Their factory is in New York. I've been there. It's cool. And the willow glass is basically this flexible glass. And theoretically, you can, right now, when you make an LCD, you have to basically make it in layers. So it's like you get the color layer and the light and then a piece of glass and another piece of glass and then the touchscreen glass goes on top, right? With this willow glass, they could put everything in the willow glass, which is in itself thinner than any of those individual layers and is flexible.
Hello.
So, there could be some ridiculous Apple Watch, I guess, on paper that would be like ultimate future, where it's a strip of glass.
Well, the thing is,
there's a strip of glass with a watch in it, and you wrap it around your wrist, even though it's entirely made of glass.
I guess
this is what people are.
I don't want to
imagining.
say the problem with Kickstarter, but more in general, the idea of, why don't I have a watch that does what, back in the day, the watch was just a convenient way to show a very useful metric of information. Now I have so much information on my phone. Why don't I just have another display on my wrist? Like, why don't we have that? And the answer is material science, battery science, wireless science. There wasn't enough of a consumer market, processing power. There's a lot of reasons. We're right about at the time where that can happen.
Yep.
And it's a sure thing. So the actual specific implementation details of how it's done, hardware and software, is literally all that matters. This has been the obvious idea for a decade.
Yeah, I mean, I hate watches mostly because I always lost them.
I hate
when
watches
I was a kid.
because I have that information somewhere else.
Right, exactly. So, and then it's like, well, why do I want something that has a timer and a stopwatch and I have that in my pocket? But
well,
now it's at the point where, if the watch doesn't suck, then that means I never have to take the thing out of my pocket, which is annoying to do.
So, I actually have a kind of reason why.
I'm going to try out all these fancy watches.
So back in the day, like middle school, I wore a watch.
I got watches.
I wore this watch in middle school because I wanted to know exactly what time it was, because I could do the cool thing, like middle school kid, like when you need to go out on that high note, middle school equivalent of a high note. It's the one day where you're sitting in class, like in June, right before school gets out, and you're sitting in like 4th period English or something, and your watch is timed where you know the exact second the bell's gonna ring.
Yep.
So you just kind of get up and start walking toward the door, and then you're just like, hey, where are you? And then the bell rings the second you hit the threshold.
That's right.
You wait your whole middle school career to pull something like that off.
Yeah.
Then in high school, I realized that I don't want to know what time it is all the time, but I want the ability to know what time it is. But I don't want the time to always be like, if I'm waiting for like an allergy shot or something, I don't want to be like, well, 4 minutes have passed. 4:01. Fuck, I'm bored. But I needed to know what time it was, for example, at RIT, if am I going to miss my class? I just woke up.
Yes.
I just woke up in an unidentified room, I think in building 6. Who am I? What time is it?
Something I just want to point out of all these watches, right? The Pebble is like $100. The Apple one, who knows what it'll be, right? If it ever exists. But
I would pay $600 for one that did what I want, like an awesome one.
The point is, even $600, compare that to the price of like the extremely fancy like Tag Heuer Rolex, real Rolex, right? It's like, it's ridiculous that the best watch in the world, technology-wise, like a few $100s, but like there's people still trying to sell watches for $1 hojillion.
Because rich people buy them as fashion statements.
Rolex gotta put computers in that shit with the gold.
That would actually ruin the reason those people buy those things.
Why?
They buy them purely for the fashion statement. They don't look at those watches. I've seen, dude, Scott, I go to business meetings. I meet people at conventions who have more money in their checking account than I will ever have made in my entire life.
All right.
Those dudes are wearing the $10,000 watch. They pull their cell phone out and look at it and see what time it is. Like straight up.
Isn't the watch really uncomfortable and big?
I don't know. They wear them. They've probably been wearing a watch for the last 40 years.
That's the number one thing. All these watches is the discomfort. But I imagine a strip of glass that is flexible might be more comfortable. I just hope it's more comfortable than a stupid wristband thing that you get at MagFest.
MagFest. So I want to. There's a lot of obvious things that we could say. So I want to talk about the less obvious things. But this is an article talking about basically how and why professors, and this extends to just teachers and faculty in general in educational institutions, reject classroom technology. And there's a lot of easy, low-hanging fruit things we could say about this. But
the
I think
obvious things.
Yes. But to summarize them all, one, a lot of these teachers just literally know nothing about technology.
That's not a not an obvious
Independently
statement.
of that, the people making the purchasing decisions for, the IT equipment or the software know nothing about technology. So
That's also obvious.
They buy a busted ass, like written in Delphi.
It's a bird.
Like scheduling thing.
It's a plane.
And then they give it to the teacher who not only sucks at computers, but also is going to suck at using this thing that itself sucks.
It's Captain Obvious.
Meanwhile, the kids all have their iPhones and their tablets and they know better. But there's also kind of a side that despite all of that, it's not just that these people don't know technology, but reading some of the quotes of like what these people say about technology.
Oh, are they hilarious?
It basically means that these people, even if that, they don't recognize that maybe the software they're getting is bad, but there could be a good solution. They reject the fundamental idea of bringing new technology into the classroom.
Well, a lot of people, who are...
What is to be gained, because it's a quote, for students by bringing IT into the class? There isn't any. You could teach all of chemistry with a whiteboard. I don't really think you need IT or anything beyond a pencil and a paper.
Well, that's true. You could teach chemistry with a chalkboard or whiteboard.
I could write software with a notepad in my Moleskine.
If you have a classroom full of children who are from this millennium and not the last one, they're going to be bored to fuck with your slow-ass, boring whiteboard. And maybe if you had some IT that did cool stuff, you could keep their fucking attention on the chemistry and then actually learn it.
Not even that. There's basic things like the teachers like managing grades and scheduling things. That should be trivial. But it's the teachers seem to, and obviously I'm generalizing, but the people who are going to bear the brunt of my ire in this article.
Anyone who's anti-technology?
Are the people who are, they deny the fundamental idea that technology can be used to make something better.
Because they're small-minded, they're not technologically minded, then they see a technology in use that is bad, they don't know how to use it and make the most of it, so then they can't imagine one that doesn't suck because they don't know.
But I ran into this all the time when I worked in the hospitals. I mean, I had this one moment. I talked about this
This
in
is
like
the whole world right now. This isn't just
or
schools.
so on Geeknights. But basically, we were installing in a bunch of hospitals in New York State prescription printers. So there, you use some system to, say...
It prints the stickers that goes on the bottles, right?
No. The actual prescription you take to the pharmacy.
Oh, okay.
So rather than having a doctor write gibberish on a piece of paper...
Oh, it prints out a piece of paper.
The
doctor
only way
just
to write a prescription
signs a gibberish
is to go into the system and say, this drug, this patient, this dosage, whatever.
Yep.
And then the printers are locked and have a serialized, so it prints with a unique barcode.
Oh, so it's totally legit.
So you can't fake a prescription, and the doctor can't mess up a prescription. And it was a great system.
That's really
Everything
good.
about it is great.
Yep.
One doctor in particular, and this is the most egregious thing that happened, but this sort of thing was the norm and not the exception. Literally, I knocked on his door, and he has a little private office, and I was like, hey, I'm here to install your... And he says, get the fuck out of my office. And I'm like, but we scheduled this. And he's like, I don't want your technology bullshit in my office. I don't need a printer. And I point out he did not, in fact, have a printer in his office. I'm going to write my prescriptions. New York State can't tell me what to do. Do not leave it here. I'll throw it away. Now, I didn't really care about my job at that point because I decided to quit anyway.
I would have fought with that guy so hard. I would have been like, fine,
so you know what I said?
guess I'll take over your x-ray machine too. How about the stethoscope? Because you apparently don't like technology.
Yeah, so no. Instead, what I did is I said, fine. And I left. Then went back to his office when he wasn't there, unlocked the door because I have the master key, and I installed it anyway.
Did he throw it out?
Yes, he threw it away. He literally threw it in the garbage. We got a report from the loading dock people. They're like, hey, it looks like someone threw away brand new equipment. You want to come take a look at it? And I go, and it's that printer. And I'm like, let me guess where this came from.
Yeah, why don't you just go tell his boss?
In
fact, if I was, I would just be like, you're fired. Welcome to the 21st century.
So if you want to know why I did not tell his boss, this is completely non-technology related rim anecdote.
Yeah, well, because you didn't care.
So I've only ever quit one job in style. I believe
there was
firmly,
that one.
I believe firmly that everyone needs to quit at least one job at one point in their life in style. The big fuck you.
Get a job at McDonald's just for one day, then quit in style just to fulfill.
Now, it's got to be justified. But so basically, I was done with that fucking job. But in that course, I had that printer, right? And I like took it and put it in this storage thing temporarily. And then it was like 3 days before I was going to quit.
Mm-hmm.
So I take the printer and the office is like, yo, you got to bring it back to the office so we can like do something with it. So I go to walk out of the hospital and the security guard's like, you can't leave with that without your requisition form. I'm going to have it confiscated if you try to walk out this door. Mm-hmm. And I looked at him and I was like, all right. And I handed it to him and I just walked away.
Nice.
He was like, and he really did not know what to do and I don't know what he did. And then I quit, and that was when I got swore at. And then in the exit interview, I told everyone what I thought of them, and I don't regret doing that.
No.
So I got one other little article I want to bring up because we can answer this question very easily. Someone asked on Slashshot, is it possible to erase yourself from the internet?
No.
Nope.
Depends how much you put on the internet. If you have never been on the internet, you
are
already erased from it.
Nope, I disagree.
Okay.
Here's the reason why. Now, yes, there might be a special case, but I do not have a Facebook account.
Mm-hmm.
Let's assume that I have no other internet presence. I have friends.
You have never had a computer in your life.
I just don't use the internet at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, one, now how do I even know? Two, you thinking that I'm a Luddite, just make a Facebook account, put my name on it, and start tagging me and stuff. Now there's a whole trail about me on the internet. People
That's
are taking
fake.
pictures of me. It's all there, and I have no control over that anyway. The metadata of the people around you will involve you. The question of erasing yourself from the internet is patently ridiculous, as is the question of keeping yourself off the internet.
You could just be someone there are 6 billion people, 7 billion people on Earth.
Yes, so
most of them have no
cases,
information about them on the internet.
So yes, the edge cases. You know what the edge cases are?
Most of humanity has no information about them
whatsoever. Okay, Scott, so if you want to get into that argument, among the first world elite.
Yeah, everyone's on the internet.
Yes. The first world problem, can you erase yourself from the internet?
No.
Yes. You know how? Go to the third world physically and never come back.
But your information from your time would still be in the internet.
But you could argue that it could no longer reach you because if you abandon your first world lifestyle entirely,
there is data about you on the internet. You're not erased from it, even if you are dead. You can kill yourself, but
the best you're doing there is preventing further information from appearing. So
right.
This kind of article appears, I don't know, every year, and the answer has always been no.
No.
Why do people keep asking? Do people not get that we're in a fundamentally new kind of society?
No. Except the people who are ready for the new kind of society.
Yeah, or the people who throw their internet away so no one can put it in their office.
You know, you can see it's all those people who turn their heads and the major walks down the street and she's just looking straight ahead.
That is perhaps the best analogy to everything we've talked about on Geek Night. But anyway, things of the day that now I kind of want to make it the opener to Ghost in the Shell.
Anyway.
Tomorrow is the new Ghost in the Shell.
Is it really tomorrow?
Supposedly
is it
February 12th.
Subtitled tomorrow?
I don't know. All I know is that event in Roppongi Hills is, I believe, tomorrow.
Oh, Roppongi Hills.
Yeah.
Anyway,
my thing of the day. So we and Geeknights, not on the show, but in the forum, the debate about gun control and whatever's been going on for a while.
People can't shut up.
I'm not talking about. Well, no, my problem with that debate is not the issue. My problem is that every debate about it on the internet is the same points being made in a circle.
Every debate about everything on the internet is the same, and people have it over and over again, and they can't shut up.
No, well, here's the difference.
You only need one, leave it there, and just read it again, and don't type anything new.
Now,
for
there is
anything
one difference.
on any of the topics that you know are frequently discussed.
There is one difference. The problem is everyone has this sort of generic bullshit argument. If you're going to debate something like gun control on the internet, the only reasonable way to have that debate is to put forth your personal, specific, full opinion on the issue. And then get enough people to do that and look for consensus. But I digress. One of the topics that always comes up is, what about when we can just print guns? Because that's why
We've talked about this 100 times.
We have, but it's always been a pretty big hypothetical. I mean,
it's thing of the day. What are you doing?
I could make a zip gun, but if I make a zip gun with PVC pipe and put anything other than like a 22 round in there, not going to work out so well. So here is a video of the straight up lower receiver firing what appears to be a 5.7 pistol round, and it works just fine. So someone printed.
Well, it doesn't work just fine. It breaks eventually.
It fires 6 shots and then breaks. Which,
Not a lot of shots.
for a commodity, printed with like current MakerBot technology without a lot of like extra work, that's pretty impressive. Because I'm thinking on the horizon of 5 years from now, you can print an assault gun that lasts for 1 rampage worth of activity. Because once you can get 1 rampage out of it, you're pretty much good to go.
Yep, pretty much.
So the reason I bring this up is the thing today, because 1, it's cool to see the lower receiver in action.
We've
actually
discussed
working.
this often many times, but this is actually a video of it working, a gun that someone printed.
So if you're going to have the debate, use this video to piss off all the people who are trying to argue about gun control, because gun control is going to be moot as soon as we have MakerBots that print metal.
Just like copyright law is moot, gun control law will be moot.
Except how come copyright law is not yet moot and a lot of people are getting really fucked over by it?
Because
because the same thing will happen with guns.
Exactly.
But I'm telling you, in the next few years, you're going to get a printed assault rifle that has at least 1 rampage worth in it.
Let's have a betting pool. Everyone picks a date on the calendar to when the first murder with a printed gun will occur.
Here's a problem
And
with
whoever
making
gets
that betting
the closest.
pool. Here's the problem with that betting pool, Scott. Let's say I bet December 25th, 2014.
You do it?
Yeah, if the
Sure, go for it. Do
How
it.
much money's on the line?
Go for it.
So what do you got for me?
So check this out.
I'm checking.
When you have some printed text, right, on a, like you say, newspaper, if your vision is good, you can just sort of sit comfortably. If your vision is bad, you might have to get close to it. You might have to squint. You might have to use an eyeglass. You might have to use various things.
Control plus.
Yeah, if you got a computer, you might have to press some Control plus, Control minus to make the text bigger or smaller, at least in a browser. If it's not a browser, good luck, right? So what we have here is someone made a web page with this incredibly clever thing. It uses the HTML5 webcam API to basically have the web page look at your face. And it figures out, based on facial recognition, where your face is and how far away your face is from the webcam, assuming you have one of those webcams attached to the monitor or built into the monitor, like in a laptop. And then, as you get closer to the screen with your face, it makes the text smaller. And when you get farther away from the screen with your face, it makes the text bigger.
Clever girl.
Yeah, and so you might think, well, wait, I can't read the text, so I get closer and it gets smaller. That doesn't help. Well, press Control plus a few times, right, to get it to be the right size, and now it'll be really useful. I see this being the most useful and not sitting at the computer, right? But
TVs.
Well, TVs maybe, yes. But also, let's say you've got a tablet sitting on the counter and with a recipe or something like that, right? And you take a few steps away to go to the fridge, you turn your head around to look at it, and the text is real big because it knows you walked far away from it.
Now,
so you
while
can
this is
clearly
cool-
see it says motherfucking cucumber. And when you get back to it, you can see the whole recipe.
While this is cool and cute, augmented reality will happen before it's practical and useful.
I think in the extreme short term, if someone deploys this into a tablet, because they all have webcams built in, if someone makes this a feature built into the tablet OS, the same way that, say, Swipe is built into some Android devices.
It would have to be made obviously much smoother.
Yes, it would have to be improved.
Here's the main problem with it. It keeps reflowing the text.
That's only because the webcam's janky.
No, but I'm saying every time you change the font size, you're reflowing text.
Yep.
Reflowing text is impossible to read while it's reflowing.
Oh, yeah.
That's the problem.
It's
the use cases around this. It would
have to
take
calibrate it.
Even then, basically, as soon as someone's moving, whenever you're reflowing the text, it's unreadable till they stop moving.
I'm pretty sure if Apple tried to put this in iPads and built it into iOS, it would work great.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
it wouldn't take them more than maybe a month to get it right.
Getting from clever girl to in a production product is what I kind of do now for a living, and I foresee.
Well, I mean, it's not like Swipe has taken over the world either, right?
Nah.
But it could reach that same level.
Oh, don't
if
get me
someone
wrong. This is
really pushed
awesome.
it. Right now, it's something some guy made on a web page that's just cool to mess with, and I'm betting it actually won't ever be used in any way for reals. But I'm just saying it's possible.
I would make a bet. So what I would do
if somebody
instead,
pushed it who is a device manufacturer.
Here's what I would
happen.
do with this. So remember, there was a prank a long time ago where you could
use it for a prank website where you get in close and then it goes.
No, I was gonna say this. So remember when people would make an image, and people still do this. Like if you go to 4chan,
Yeah,
you
waits
can
a
have
few seconds and it goes.
No. Much more clever. So you can have an image that from up close looks like one thing, but from far away looks like something completely different. So I click on the image, I see a picture of a kitten because I'm sitting next to my monitor, but then my boss across the room sees a penis. Like, that's pretty easy to do. So another thing you can do is you have a thumbnail that looks like one thing because of the way the thumbnail is compressed, but when you click on the full image, it expands to the penis. So you could set this up to where it's always showing the penis to everyone except you.
What?
So it manipulates
But it
the
can only, it
image.
looks at one face. So if your face is close to the screen.
Okay, so obviously it wouldn't be perfect, but say there's someone across the room. If I get close to it, it's going to make it so that the big, it'll make like the big image where I see what I'm looking at, but my boss sees the penis. But if I get far away, maybe it just keeps showing me the cat, so I'll never figure it out.
Oh, because it's locked onto your face?
You'd have to. This is an elaborate prank.
It's not going to work. I think a better idea is just, the real problem is that you have to give the browser your permission to use the webcam, so you have to say yes. But you can make a prank where someone gets their face closer and closer to the screen, and then it goes, ah! And they get all, whoa, shit, and it makes a good YouTube video because it's simultaneously capturing their getting closer and surprisedness with the webcam while it's also evaluating their face distance. Dual purpose webcam.
So in the meta moment, we're going to be at PAX East doing 2 or 3 lectures.
We don't even know.
Mastering game mechanics, practical game theory, and one that is TBA and or TBD.
This is in March something. I'm not going to bother to look it up.
Yep.
I think April or May is Anime Boston.
Yep, I assume we'll be there.
Yep.
Kineticon, submit your panels. We're currently scheduling. I have personally scheduled like 11 panels. It's not public yet because we're going to schedule in batches and then release them all. If you want to do a panel, lecture, workshop, juggling event, whatever, submit them now because the longer you wait, the less likely it is I will even look at your submission.
Yep. The weekend after Kineticon,
PAX East.
we got to start working on all.
We got to
this
decide.
shit.
We got to decide for sure if we're going to go and start looking at plane
I'm
tickets.
definitely going.
Get time
Decided
off
that
work.
already. We should
confirm the time off work.
We should get the hotel at least for that weekend in the Melbourne place. Yeah, so we should at least get the hotel for the convention, and we can worry about the other stuff.
And I'm debating, Otakon, ever since they blacklisted us, basically never accepts panels from us anymore. So I'm debating just giving up entirely and just never going again.
It doesn't hurt to send an email.
Yeah, but then again, I'm at the point now where we have so many other big cons going on that if Otakon was like, accept, it would be a shame if they blacklist us for years after doing like a decade's worth of panels for them. They unblacklist us and we immediately turn them down.
Depends on the weekend.
Yeah, I don't even know when Otakon is. Guys, tell us if you want us to be at Otakon, and also tell Otakon if you want us to be at Otakon.
I think people already did that.
I don't know if they did or not. I think you were accused of a conspiracy to incite a riot the last time we suggested that people suggest to Otakon that we come.
Sure.
I think I saved that thread in the staff forum before they kicked us out.
Everyone should go to the feedback panel and say something, and then even though someone else already said it,
and then
say it
2
again.
minutes later, I get an email from some Otakon staff guy who's like, "We've got a situation that we got to talk about. Your co-host is trying to incite a riot. This is a security thing." And I was like, "What?"
I was like,
What?
I was saying, look, they really got to mail the badges, and you know what? They still fucking have to mail the badges.
Yeah.
Everyone, since they're not going to mail them, go up. This is what I said. I said everyone should go to the feedback panel, go up to the microphone, and say, "Mail the badges," and then you sit down, and then even though they already heard "mail the badges," which they hear every year anyway, someone else should go to the microphone and say, "Mail the badges" again, and everyone who goes up should keep saying it.
For
in
any
order
convention,
to really drive it home and embarrass them.
Mailing the badges. If your convention has more than like 5,000 people, I mean, Kineticon, I wish we would mail the badges. I want it to happen. I'm working for it as much as I can in my little fiefdom. MagFest really fucking needs to mail the badges.
Oh, good God.
Though,
their line isn't too bad, but still mail the badges.
oh, the line's not bad now, but MagFest is growing rapidly. And
That's
also,
true.
mailing the badges means that they're going to have to give up on their stupid wristband, which is my primary motivation there. That wristband.
All right.
So in our topic,
the book club book is
well, The Great Gatsby, we read it. We're going to do a show as soon as we
probably
feel like
next
it.
week. We'll do the episode.
Scott, you pick another book yet?
Maybe.
You're not going to say?
I'll tell you next Thursday.
All right.
When I've really picked it.
And of course, forum, videos, Utena, all that stuff. It's out there. It's happening. So, Routers.
I tried to think of something we didn't do an episode on, and I saw we did a printer episode, and I think we did a mouse keyboard episode. So it's like, well, let's try to cover all the equipment we didn't cover.
So I want to point out,
we did an episode on home networking where I think we covered a lot of this area, but we didn't do a show specifically on routers. So whatever, loophole.
So here's my deal. I go to Wikipedia and I type a router just for the show, just in case.
They're talking about the power tool.
So there is a disambiguation page, and of the 4 things here, I think one of them really doesn't deserve to be here. Let's see if you can pick out which one.
Okay.
Router, woodworking, a rotating cutting tool.
Yep.
Router, computing, a computer networking device.
Yep.
Routing, electronic design automation software.
Mm-hmm.
MC Router, born 1986, nerdcore rapper.
What? Never even heard of him.
Really, MC Router?
He has a Wikipedia page? You should mark him as not notable.
She has a Wikipedia page.
Okay, nice. But still, mark is not notable. Unless they're notable and I've just never heard of them because I'm not that into it.
She is looking at these press things about as notable as we are, but I don't think she deserves to be on the router disambiguation page. That'd be like if the, I don't know, podcast disambiguation page was like Geeknights.
Well, if we were on the geek disambiguation
it's like
page.
Geek
or
Nights.
the night disambiguation page.
Night, the time of day, opposite daylight. Geeknights. So yeah, we're talking about computer routers in computing.
Okay, so for those of you who are really out of the loop, what the hell does at least a home router do? And basically what it does is you get a cable modem or a DSL or a Fios or something, and it's only got one Ethernet cable coming out of that motherfucker, and you got 5 motherfucking computers. How do you plug a whole bunch of computers to get internet from that one guy? You plug a router into that guy, then you plug all the computers into the router.
Well, let's back up a little bit, because in the home world, there was a time where switches were not generally available to the consumer.
Nope.
Nor were routers.
Nope. You had to buy a hub.
So I would have a cable modem, and directly plugged into that would be my computer.
Well, in the dial-up days, you couldn't do shit. Right? The computer basically had a dial-up modem in it, and if you wanted to share the internet, you had to share.
You might have had an external modem.
Right, you had to basically share the internet from that computer that had the modem on it to the other computers.
Yeah, you want to share your 300 baud.
Exactly.
Do any of you kids even know what baud means without looking it up, and why we don't use that term anymore? Baud. I had a 300 baud modem. I used the fuck out of that thing.
I had a 14.4.
Yeah. Then I upgraded to a 2400 baud, which could almost play Mad Maze, but not quite. Anyway, so really, let's talk about terminology here. I'm going to back up from the home routers a bit. So whenever you go to a network class, like you think, oh, there's switches and there's routers and there's hubs. But really, those terms just refer to sort of multi-port versions of other more fundamental things. So if you think about networking the way you think about, say, electronics, there's an integrated circuit, but then there's a logic gate. So a hub is really just a hub. It's the same thing as a repeater, but it repeats out multiple ways. We don't need to talk about the details beyond that. Hubs don't exist in the modern world anymore.
No one uses hubs anymore. The only place I still see hubs is at LAN parties that don't have a big budget, usually have like these...
if you
usually have like these 100-port hubs that they stack up at the end of the table.
They're all like 10 megabit.
Yeah, they have 10 or 100 megabit hubs.
You just got for $100, you can buy a 54-port, 48 gigabit backplane like switch from a gray market provider.
Right, but a lot of these LAN parties bought this equipment in the olden days, and it still works, so that they have no reason to replace it. And it actually, if you can play LAN games on a hub like that, just fine.
No, you really can't with too many computers on them. Not
depends,
anymore. Not anymore.
That's what they used at PAX. I had no problems
Are
playing
you sure?
Counter-Strike.
Are you sure those were hubs?
Next time we're at PAX, look at the end of the row. See what's there.
Scott, I'm just asking if you were sure they were hubs.
It looked like hubs to me.
Yeah. What does a hub look like compared to a switch?
You can tell by the blinky lights. The way they blink is different.
Nope.
Yep.
Nope.
Yep.
Nope.
Yep.
That is not true.
Yep.
At all.
It is.
Anyway, so a repeater, in the old days, you're sending data over a wire, And say your cable's really long. You put a repeater in the middle.
There's a limit on that length. You can't make a cable infinitely long.
The repeater receives all the data coming in. Now, it's analog electricity, but we interpret it as digital, so there's no loss. And we just make new packets, a new digital signal coming out the other end.
And it
That's all
reads
does.
the electricity, and then it rewrites the same electricity. So it goes in at not full power
a little
because
more
it lost some power over the wire.
Well,
it
no,
comes out
that,
at full power again.
It's a little more subtle than that, which is why I want to make the distinction. That an amplifier takes the electricity and kind of regenerates the electricity, like adds to it to make it the right electricity again. A hub, aka a repeater, actually reads the signal and does something to interpret it as digital data inside of itself, and basically makes an entirely new signal from scratch.
Yep.
If it didn't do that, it's not technically a repeater, it's an amplifier.
Yeah, well, an amplifier might, amplify too much or not enough because you don't know the exact strength of what's coming in.
Well, no, you can manage that with the circuit.
You need a variable amplifier.
No, the problem with an amplifier is that it also amplifies the noise, so it doesn't really buy you much with digital communications.
Exactly.
In this context. So a hub is just a repeater where anything that comes in one port goes off all the other ports. A switch is basically a multi-port bridge. And all a bridge says is, I'm going to do what a hub does, but if I know that the dude a packet was for is not on the other side of this, I'm not going to repeat it. So all bridges do is limit the amount of traffic on any given network segment.
I thought that the switch was also smart enough to know, I know this is for dude number 3 on hole 3. I'm only going to send it on hole 3.
I said a bridge does that. A switch is just basically a large multi-port set of bridges that are configurable centrally. So, but the point is, all the switch does fundamentally is do what a bridge does. It says, this is a packet that I could repeat everywhere, but I'm only going to repeat it to the places that I know someone actually cares about the data. So it means you have more bandwidth overall, and collisions, forget all that stuff. A router basically is the next step where it has logic beyond that. This is where we're not just talking about one network. A router at its core connects multiple networks to each other. Actual networks.
For example, your home network to the ISP's network, or Google's network to Sprint's network to Microsoft's network. Right? All have routers in between, right? That's why the routers are always at the edge of the network, right? Even if it's an internal or external network or a sub-network, the routers are always at the edges. You never see a router in the middle of a network. That doesn't really help you that much.
So what is a network? Well, we did a whole show on this, I think, a long time ago, but to super summarize it, one set of IP addresses and a subnet mask, which, CIDR, like if you think of Class A, Class B, Class C, and all that stuff, that's really kind of obsolete. But anyway, or the 255, 255, 255.0.
How about
basically,
IPv6?
The face I made was pretty great. One network is like a set of IP addresses that are all together. So in the old days, assume there's no network. So I got just a giant hub, all my computers connected together. So I don't even need IP.
Nope.
All my communication can happen down at layer 2 at the data link level, all on one big network. I assume anything I put on that network, anyone can see if they give a shit about it.
Yeah, you double click on network in Windows and you see fucking every computer that's plugged into the hub.
So,
hello, everybody.
So if you have 2 separate networks, you can basically pretend that anything that's on a different network is a completely alien world, and nothing on your home network has any direct way to talk to anyone over there. So what a router does is your OSI stack, your TCP/IP stack, and I'm skipping all the stuff that isn't relevant to TCP/IP because that doesn't matter to any of you who are listening to this.
We're using normal everyday computers, which 90% of what they do is TCP/IP.
So if I want to
UDP.
send a message from the RIM network to the SCOT network, my network has its own rules of engagement. Let's say my addresses are 10 dot. So 10.0.0.1 is my computer, and 10.50.1.109.1 is my NAS. Whatever I set up, I can do any arbitrary bullshit. It does not matter at all what Scott's network looks like because he can do whatever he wants on his own. He might use the exact same addresses as me.
Yep.
So the router is just a complicated set of logic that can deal with 2 different networks simultaneously and figure out how to get data between the 2. That is at its core what a router does. It interfaces networks together, thus allowing us to have an internet. Oh my God, it's a collection of multiple internetworked networks. Dog.
It's the internet.
So the way a router does this, and then we'll get back to the more interesting stuff that you guys probably care about, but it's relevant because almost no one I talk to, especially developers, really understands this.
No, they know how to plug it in. They plug the ISP into the big separated hole, and they plug all the computers in the other holes.
So let's assume we have a router, and on my network, so this router has 3 interfaces. It has an interface to some ISP somewhere, like internet, for internet access. It has a second port in the RIM network, and I give it an arbitrary address in my network. It has a third port in the Scott network, and Scott gave it whatever IP address he wanted as well. If I send a packet somewhere, I put an IP address in that packet, but I also put some other information in that packet. So if I'm sending something to a PC on my network, I say the IP address of that PC, and at the low level, some ARPing happens. So basically, my computer sends a packet out to my whole network that says, yo, dog, I'm looking for the motherfucker that has IP 10.1.1.1. And whoever has it gets that data link packet and says, yo, dog, that's me. Here's my MAC address. Now you can send shit to me for reals. And then everything else I send is directed just at that guy. Now, other people might see it. The network cards and the switches job is to filter out the stuff that people don't need to see. But I say, hey, I have this address on my network. I'm trying to get to someone else who has an IP address. Every computer has 2 addresses, MAC address, IP address. So whoever has this IP, tell me how to get to you on the network. Those MAC addresses don't need to be unique between networks. Let's assume that my network and Scott network, we have identical MAC addresses. MAC addresses never leave the network. So if I want to connect to Scott's network, I say with an IP address, yo, I'm looking for this IP address. Now let's say...
Well, no one on your network has that IP address.
Yeah, so no one would respond. And there's no way on earth I can find the MAC address of anyone on Scott's network. And
even if you could, it wouldn't do anything.
Exactly, because my router would say, the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And they might overlap. You don't know. It's a different network. I can't just send my network's garbage onto Scott's network. That's the whole reason we have routers. And the internet, you don't know someone's MAC address. What's a MAC address, if anything, at Google?
Yeah, right.
So... my computer says, yo, dog, I'm looking for IP address 192.168.69.69. Well, nobody answers because nobody has that. Except someone does answer. The router says, yo, dog, I can get you there. So send that shit over to me.
I thought that sometimes what happens is the router doesn't answer, but your computer has configured a default gateway.
Okay,
to
so
where when no one answers, he then says, all right, I'll just ask Mr. Default Gateway.
So let's get a little more complicated. You have a default gateway, which is actually just a route that you've configured on your computer.
You basically tell your computer, hey, computer, the router is at this address. That's where router B.
So you can set up complicated routes on your computer. So say I have multiple networks, this is the coolest stuff we get to the end. I can say, yo, computer, for any 10 dot address, use this physical interface or this gateway or whatever. For these other IPs, use this other gateway. So I could have my internal network and my computer could be connected to 3 different networks simultaneously. I can do all sorts of crazy crap.
Well, maybe you got, for example, you're at a college and they got Internet 1 and Internet 2. So that router says, hey, any IPs that, for Internet 1, go this way. Any Internet 2, go that way.
Yeah. So, basically, yes, your computer, to skip the details, because without drawing a diagram of it, you're just going to ignore me talking until I finish talking about this bit. Your computer will basically have the default gateway, which says, yo, anything that's not on your network is over at this guy. And what the router does is you actually, at the data link layer, send your packets directly to the router with its MAC address.
And the router takes care of all the rest of the shit for you.
The router takes that packet, says, all right, now it acts like a computer. So it's as though
it is a computer.
I have a computer on Scott's network, and now it follows Scott's rules and says, yo, guys, I'm looking for this IP address. My MAC address is X. So any messages Scott sends back to me, he sends them to the MAC address of the router. The router does all the translation and all the bullshit. So that's...
And it's probably his router probably talks to another router, which talks to another one, which talks to another one, which talks to mine, which talks to the computer on my network, which then talks all the way back around. But
So-
really, everything only talks to the network that they're on, and the only machines that ever talk to more than one network at a time are routers.
Basically, yes. Now, a computer can serve the function of a router.
Because a
if you
router is just a computer. You
Yes.
can install IP route on your computer, and now your computer is doing routing.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So, what's other than connect me to the internet and NAT and PAT, network address translation, port address translation, all the stuff that your router's doing that you actually don't need to do at the router. There's other ways to do it. Skip all that. Other than the basic stuff, as in you've got a router, it connects you to the internet, there's actually a lot of cool stuff you can do with your router. You should log into its admin interface and take a look.
Well, first of all, depending on how much money you spent on your router, there's more stuff you can do. And also, maybe you've installed a special firmware such as DDWRT or Tomato onto a crappy router to give it much more functionality that it could have had. Because remember, router, again, just a computer with a bunch of network cards in it. So there's no reason it can't do a lot of things, except they may be too CPU intensive and the router will shit itself trying to do them.
Yep, not a lot of power in there.
No. So one thing, a lot of routers have wireless access points built in. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah. Now, notice if you set that up, usually what it's actually doing is your wireless has a separate set of IPs. It's actually a separate network. Some routers do that automatically.
Yep.
Or, something like that. Now, you can do clever stuff there. You can set up your router such that, all right, anyone can connect to my wireless, but I'm not going to let that network access my internal network. I only route them directly to the internet.
Yeah, you can have the router, right? Remember, the router connects networks together. You can tell the router to make multiple networks. Like my house has like 3 networks. It has a wireless one, a wired one, and then it has a guest wireless where if anyone connects in the guest wireless, like they can't see my NAS because it's not on the same network as them.
Yeah.
I don't want people getting on my NAS. They might delete my files. Can't
Now,
trust that.
I put my security at a different level. My NAS is accessible on my entire internal network.
But you put security in the NAS itself.
Yes, the NAS itself is set up to where anyone can get media files off of it, but they can't write to it. And I actually have a Dropbox where anyone can dump anything but can't read back off of it. And I got all sorts of cool stuff set up there that
It was easier for me to just say NAS be a completely accessible drive. That way I don't have to configure anything.
Yep, the reason I set up the way I did is that a lot of times people come over and say, "Oh, hey, you've got Anime X, can I borrow?" And I say, "Yeah, just pull it off the NAS."
And they failed to do so.
No, they succeed. The people who fail to do so are not the ones I offer that to.
Look how many people still be like trading hard external drives and USB sticks and
There are
discs.
reasons for that sometimes.
Technological.
If I'm giving, I'm downloading, I am allegedly downloading a torrent right now. You know what it is? All of Seinfeld in the HD remaster. It's
There's
132.
an HD remaster of Seinfeld.
It's like a Blu-ray release or
Does
something.
it have an removed laugh track?
I don't know. All I know is it's 132 gigabytes.
Okay.
So it might take a little while to transfer that over my wireless to someone's laptop.
Do they even have 132 gigs?
Exactly.
free?
It might be easier.
But it's not
just
like
to-
they're gonna have 132 gig stick.
It might just be easier to hand them a small external hard drive with like 2 terabytes on it and just say, bring it back. Oh, and it also has all the robot openers and everything else I've ever collected on it because whatever. It's my throwaway external hard drive.
Great.
Other cool things you can do. Set up segregated networks for different things. For example, one thing you can do on a router is there's always this option called the DMZ, the demilitarized zone,
Ooh,
that
it sounds cool.
most people ignore.
It sounds really cool, but only really weird people use it.
What it basically means is you can have one computer that is on the outside of your router so that people, if they connect to your external IP address, whatever it might be, that computer is basically what they hit.
Yeah, right now, if somebody tries to connect to whatever IP address my ISP gave me, they're going to hit the router itself, and maybe the router will do something, and maybe it won't.
Usually your router is set to not let anything through unless it's part of an existing connection.
Exactly. So
Because you don't want some jackass just SSHing into your boxes.
if I put a computer and I plug it into the router, that's going to be on the inside. It's going to be on my network. But if I click on the router and I say, hey, make that computer DMZ, it's going to be as if that computer is actually between the router and the internet, or sort of next to the router on the other side. So I could put, a web server on there, and if someone visits my IP address of my house in their browser, they'll see a web page that comes from that computer. I could put a Counter-Strike server on there, and then I won't need to fuck around with the port forwarding nonsense. It'll just freaking work.
Yeah. Another cool thing you can do that I'm actually working on setting this up now. A lot of modern routers, you can set them up to receive VPN connections. So then if you have a laptop with some VPN software, or you set up your smartphone with certain VPN software, and you use something like DynDNS, so you have an external DNS name that maps to whatever bullshit IP your ISP gives you that might change, you can just be like, boop, and have a direct VPN that's secure and encrypted to your own personal internal network to like our desktop on your PC or pull something off your NAS.
Yep.
How totally useful is that?
Super useful if you're the kind of person to keep stuff in your house. Right now, what a lot of people do, because that's such a pain in the ass,
is they use like not GoToMeeting. They use like
they use all sorts of cloud shit,
or they use like GoToMyPC or those janky.
Well,
ass
not
things.
just that, but like they use Dropbox and all these other sorts of cloud services, right? Where it's like, hey, I can't send the files directly to the computer in my house or get them from the computer in my house while I'm at Starbucks. So what I'll do is I'll pay someone else who has computers out in the cloud on the internet, right, that aren't behind routers, all locked up. I'll upload files there, go home and download the files.
But dog, you have a computer that's already on the internet.
Why can't you send them directly from your laptop to your house and back and forth? Because you have this router in the way that's not doing fancy things for you because you didn't configure it because it's not that easy.
Now, the use case is this. For example, I use Google Drive for that. Like my laptops and everything.
Yep.
All just, I have access to all my Google Drive stuff everywhere. But you know what? That's only 5 or 10 gigs. It's not everything. That's the stuff that I know I want to back up and share. But what if, say, I'm on vacation and, oh shit, the Dave and Joel Fast Karate for the Gentleman episode didn't upload right. Well, I didn't put that on my Google Drive.
Nope.
Well, if I don't have a VPN back to my house, there's literally no way to do anything about that. That actually happened many years ago. So we had to wait an extra week until we got home from our week at the shore, our writer's retreat, after Otakon to put up the fantastic episode of Geeknights that Dave and Joel did for us. Had I set up a VPN on the home router, I could just logged in, sent a wake on Ethernet to wake up my PC, and just done it.
Yep.
What other cool things could we do that you guys would actually do? Because there's crazy stuff you can do that you probably shouldn't do.
Shouldn't do?
Yeah, like unless you know what you're doing, don't fuck with your DHCP settings. You're just going to break everything.
Yeah.
One DHCP thing you should do, actually, is if you're having your router do your DHCP, which most people do, you probably shouldn't, just because routers kind of suck at that and have problems sometimes. But at the same time, you can only get off of the router if you have another PC in your house that isn't your actual PC that is guaranteed to always be on.
Yep.
But then you can set up your DHCP to pass Google DNS to all your internal PCs instead of your ISP's garbage DNS.
Right. Or what you have to do otherwise is go to each and every PC in your house and change the DNS settings to use the Google public
But the whole
DNS.
point of computers is to make that stuff easy.
Yep.
The whole point of DHCP is you don't have to configure anything. Your computer
or
just
you
works.
can set up a computer that's always on that is a DNS server and have that use the Google DNS, and all the computers in your house use that as
But then
DNS.
you have to tell your DHCP server to tell all your computers to use that as the DNS.
But you already have a computer that's the computer that's always on doing the DNS, so that
But
one
then
can
you have to
also
know
do
to
the
log into
DHCP.
your router to turn off its DHCP, because let me tell you, son, if you got 2 DHCPs on your network, it's a bad day.
Bad day.
Especially because the kinds of people who will let 2 DHCP servers be on their network are not the kinds of people who know how to recognize that that's the problem.
Yeah, and if you have a DHCP server either in your router or separate from your router, you can go to it and say, hey, look, see this computer that's connected to you right now? Make that IP address on that computer 192.168.110 and make it always 110. So your desktop will always have the same internal IP all the time, which makes it really easy if like you connect between your computers a lot. So like it won't be like, where'd my NAS go? It moved from 15 to 17. Well, shit. You can make it so it's always 15 all the time, no matter what.
Yep. Now, I actually didn't bother with that, but that's partly because since I'm on a one network, my NAS and everything just show up because everything's kind of broadcasting.
Well, they're using what's it
the
called?
Windows stuff.
Yeah, what's the freaking Apple
Well,
one called?
the Apple, whatever.
Yeah, I forget what it's
Whatever.
called. Bonjour uses that
Yeah,
shit.
whatever, Apple.
Yeah. Another really cool thing
I don't need
you
to
can
run
do,
a Wins server anymore.
something that's incredibly useful if you have a lot of people use on your network, right? Especially untrustworthy people, is to use QoS, which stands for quality of service, but really what it means is you fucking choke a bitch
So
when
here's
they
what I
misbehave.
do. I log into my router and I can see, like Scott's laptop, because he's on the network. I can log in right now and it gets his host name. It gives him an IP and I can see, oh, that's Scott's laptop. That's the IP. And I know his MAC address. I could set it up to where, hey, anytime that fucking MAC address connects, only give him 5 megabit.
Yeah, you can basically...
Or don't let him torrent.
Well, yeah, you can regulate people's bandwidth and set rules based on which computer and also based on time of day and
So
all
think
sorts
of
of
this.
other factors.
Have your router automatically throttle down your torrents when you're home and let him go nuts when you're at work.
Yep, so you can just leave your torrents running all the time, and the router will automatically force the torrents to all be like 1 megabit, whatever, during hours when you would be at home, and let it use up all the bandwidth when you're not at home. Or maybe you've got a neighbor that's stealing your Wi-Fi, but you want to let them steal your Wi-Fi for some reason. Maybe they're paying you to share or something because they're lazy. I don't know.
Or maybe you're just,
I wouldn't recommend it. I say get your own ISP and don't let anyone else use it.
No, there's a very good reason why you let all your neighbors use it. Plausible deniability.
You're better off using your neighbors for plausible deniability than...
Well, no, a combination of the two. You do your illegal shit on theirs, and if they do anything on yours, or if you accidentally do anything on yours, I don't know, must have been my neighbor.
But anyway, you can say limit neighbors to 500K so they can't really do anything nasty.
Or if you want to do crazy stuff. So say you get a VPN like iPredator, right?
Yep.
So you can put that in your router and set up a routing table. You could do something like this, something so cool and clever, and it'll all be automatic. Every time you start up a torrent, it just automatically goes through iPredator. But nothing else goes through iPredator.
Yep.
Or you could set it up to where every time I'm connecting to my illegal offshore bank account to finance the barge, it knows all those routes go through iPredator. So you can still do your normal stuff on your computer, and you can set up routes for all these different connections.
Yeah, usually when you pay for one of those VPN services like iPredator, you can only have one computer attached to it at a time. So if I were to attach to it with, say, my desktop, well, my laptop and my phone, which are still in my house, would not be able to send their traffic over it to Sweden before they send it to the internet. But if I have my router connect to iPredator, well, not all the internet traffic in my house could be encrypted and sent to Sweden and anonymized before it's sent to the internet.
Or I could set it to where the only traffic that gets sent over iPredator is my burner laptop that doesn't have a hard disk in it. Burner laptop, guys. If you're gonna commit crimes, this is the crime aside. We should make that a bit in Geeknights.
Crime aside.
Get a
How to commit crimes and get away with it by Geeknights.
Get a cheapo laptop with an optical drive. Though a USB, you could do it with USB nowadays.
Don't
too,
put any hard drives in it.
Yeah, no hard drives.
Optical drive only.
Optical drive and as much RAM as you can fit in that motherfucker. Boot a Linux Live CD and hibernate it, but never turn it off.
Yeah, and remove the Linux Live CD. Then install, download and install whatever illegal things you have to install from the internet. Configure them while the laptop is on. Attach the laptop to some wireless network in a Starbucks or something. Hide it somewhere, plugged into power.
Or keep it in your house, set up to route through iPredator and do all your evil shit there.
Yeah, have it. Well, iPredator's maybe not that secure.
Well,
but
there's an equivalent of iPredator.
Yeah, but the point is, just have this laptop doing all this evil shit. And if the police ever find it or the FBI ever come for it and they confiscate it, because that's what they do, they're going to unplug it or whatever, or maybe they'll try to turn it on and look at it. And it's like, okay, they can't really log into it. So what is their usual game plan? They take the hard drive out and they examine it. And if it's an encrypted hard drive, well, they can try. But if there is no hard drive, then what the fuck do? They just turned it off. All the evidence
now there
just
are
disappeared.
forensic ways to deal with that, but the way around that is
you can put the RAM in the freezer really quick.
in the time between when they beat down my door and they get to my room, I can probably pull the plug on the laptop.
Yep, and then
if you want to be extra paranoid, there's no battery in there either. If it's the kind of laptop that'll run with a put a dead battery in.
You just unplug it and there's no battery in it, and boom, everything's toast.
And that was the Geeknights crime aside.
That's right. They can't scan a hard drive if there isn't one. Oh no, you found the CD that is a Linux Live CD.
So what's the moral of all this? You know what routers do now, which is basically anything a computer can do. log into the admin interface of whatever your router is and look at what options you have and think to yourself. Normally we say, come up with something you want to do and then look up how to do it. But in this case, my homework for all of you
There's
people...
stuff that you didn't know you could do that you probably do want to do. You just don't know better.
So if you want to learn about networking, computers, and everything, just log into your router, look at all the options, and think, all right, what can I do with that option?
Also, if you have a cheap router, you're probably not going to have the options, right? I have the Netgear WNDR 3700, which is a really expensive and fancy router that does all sorts of fancy shit.
I have the shitty Fios router. That's actually pretty good, but I got to buy another router to put between it and my network.
You do.
I just haven't yet.
You should do that.
This has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geek Nights is not one, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geek Nights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geek Nights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.
He has an old laptop, and basically the reason I'm
How
asking...
old?
Like a year or two?
That's not that old.
It's kind of old. So basically, I'm asking you this because I'm curious if you would suggest what I did, because I was the office hero because I gave advice and he was able to recover the data. Hard drive and laptop got immersed in water.
Uh-oh.
Let's forget about how. Laptop fucked. Done. Forget the laptop.
Okay, take the hard drive
Has the
out
hard
with a
drive.
screwdriver. Yep.
He dried it and everything.
Yep.
Like you waited days. But like you do, if a hard drive, if you get a phone or something wet, you turn it off, take the battery out, and just wait a few days and hope it dries out and see if it'll start at the end. So he does that. And what he does, he takes one of those external enclosure things,
Good idea.
plugs it in, and just turns on the power. It doesn't plug into a computer, just turns on the power to see
Good
what'll
idea.
happen.
Good idea.
And all it does is go click, click,
Uh-oh.
click, and nothing happens.
Uh-oh.
So he, of course, tries plugging into a computer. Same thing. It just goes click,
Uh-oh.
click. So, Scott, my question to you is, in that situation...
It's magnetic, obviously.
Yes, it's a spinning disc. A standard laptop-size SATA spinning disc. I think it's 80 gigs or 120, something like that. What would you suggest he do?
There are 3 tricks I know, each of which are the more extreme option, right? Option number 1, smack it once, then try again. Option number 2, the old freezer trick. But
Hey, it's Monday, February 11th, 2013. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights tonight, talking about routers.
Let's do this.
So I'm walking down that long ramp just now, coming back to the studio, and from the 456 to the 7 train under Grand Central.
Oh, that ramp.
Long ramp. It's pretty wet, so it's kind of slippery.
And
I'm
it's
walking.
downhill.
I'm walking. And a girl next to me wearing these tall boots just like falls out of nowhere.
That'll
She's young. She's like our age.
That'll happen.
She just falls. And she goes like, ugh, and doesn't get up right away. So I kind of pause and do the kind of New York thing. If you look a little bit, just to see if it's something you should get involved with.
Yep.
And her ankle is 90 degrees.
Okay.
And she
Probably
can't,
some weird ass shoe.
and she's like trying to get up and like she can't get up. And she's not, now for a second I'm like, whoa, but she's not really yelling or anything. So her friends like get her up on her feet. And then she reaches down and pulls her boot back up. She fell because her foot misaligned in the boot. And the boot itself turned 90 degrees. And her foot was like 6 inches up in the boot.
What the hell? Why don't you put your foot in your shoe?
I don't know. So basically her fail was that she was wearing jank-ass boots. So
I would be hesitant on the freezer trick because of the water possibility. But with the 3 days of drying, I would be...
So the freezer trick worked.
Of course.
Straight up. They basically... And
you go
I realized,
for the free. You put it in a Ziploc bag. You put it in the freezer. You take it out. You start up, and you get the data off really quick before it breaks again.
So basically, yeah, we thought along the exact same lines. We know.
And option 3 is the bathroom clean room trick.
Scott, I think you and I know the same amount about hard drives.
Why wouldn't we?
Well, there's some things like I know more about networking
So
than
do you have a freezer at work that you used?
Yeah, we have a full-size fridge.
How long did you put it in the freezer
so basically,
before it worked?
he's like, well, how do I get the data off? And I was like, did you try hitting it? He's like, what? And I'm like, well, you get this. I explained like the torque and how you want to get it spinning again.
Maybe just the thing is off the edge of the discs and you know the reader, and if you smack it, it'll bounce back.
Just like, okay, but no, that's not going to work. So basically, I'm like, all right, here's what I would suggest. And I explained, like, let's put it in a Ziploc bag, put it in the freezer. I said at least 2 hours, which is about right for a consumer freezer. I
would have been slightly wary because of the water, but it's already dead. So I mean, what have you got to lose?
I would assume that the water was gone because it's been dried for a long time. And if water got in, like fully in
water
there,
is very unlikely to get in. It's most likely to be on the contacts on the board.
If the water was still in there, then it's fucked.
Yeah,
anyway.
water is very unlikely to get in where the discs are. It's just going to get all over the circuit board.
But it'll get maybe into where the bearings are.
That's
what I was thinking.
Maybe.
You know, the main reason these tricks work is because you're trying to just reduce the went from thinking she had broken her ankle sideways, which would have been kind of disturbing, and I probably wouldn't have brought it up on Geeknights too. Kind of funny instead. And what seals it is her friend once like picks her up and she's like, "Man, I told you these boots are shit.
This brings
Why
up
you wear these things?"
This brings up something that is a bother of mine, right? That is often exposed when people come to the city where much walking must happen.
Yeah, every time we had a friend who wears high heels when they visit us.
Not even high heels, but I am opposed to any shoe that is not functional, right? It's like, what is the point of a nice looking shoe? You buy it because it's super nice looking, even though I don't agree that those shoes are even nice looking, personally. That cannot be worn or walked in or run in or anything, right?
Well, I have one metric in New York City. Can you walk as fast as I plan to walk for at least a mile on New York City streets with neither discomfort nor damage to the shoe?
Nor damage to your foot.
Because if you cannot, you probably either shouldn't wear those shoes or shouldn't come to New York.
Right.
Now, if you're way shorter than me, then we have to prorate your speed of walking to how long your legs are. I'll give you that. I don't expect someone who's 2 feet shorter than me to walk 4.6 miles per hour down the street at a sustained rate. Because for them, that's running. But I got a much more related thing that happened. So at work today, coworker had a problem. He had work necessary to get that disc spinning, because once it's spinning, you're good unless the controller.
Well, you have to get the reader has to fly on the surface. It might if it falls off.
But those are all secondary problems, and the click 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 was obvious. It can't spin the disc up at all. If it did nothing, I would assume the controller was dead. If it had spun up but there was no data, I would assume there's some problem in the platters. But the fact that it did the click, click, click like that meant it was trying to spin the disc up. So I'm explaining like what to do, and he's looking at me, and now the whole office is watching like, what? What?
Did you bet money on it?
No, I was like, it can't hurt. Just trust me. So he does it, and sure enough, spun up just fine, got all the data off of it.
They never heard of the freezer trick.
No.
You hired a whole bunch of technological people to work at a company that makes software, and not one of them know the freezer trick.
Most tech people I know don't know how to recover data from hard drives. Because that is a skill that was only relevant in the day back when, you and I, we could only afford one hard disk.
Now I have more than I need. I got rid of a bunch of them.
You'd buy a new hard disk, but you're going to fill it up with stuff. And the old one, you're never going to put that data. We couldn't afford an external hard disk back then.
No.
And also, back then, spinning disks were way more prone to failure.
They were.
Yeah.
Yep.
So even if I backed up my data, I couldn't afford to buy a new disc. So if it just died, like anything I could do to get it spinning again, just to use it for another day.
Why don't we try to put